And this is the agenda. We will start with a short introduction of the functions, just so you get an idea of what we're going to talk about. After that, I will do a walkthrough in Business Central, where we will look at first reference codes and then purchase codes. And then after that, we will look at 2 other settings that I want to show you, and then we will end with the Q&A. And the time for the session today is 25 minutes. So this is the functions we're looking at today. First, ExFlow reference codes. You use this one to apply logic to your invoices. So when you import a document with a reference that you have interpreted, then you can trigger a specific action when you import the document. So for example, you might have imported a document with someone's name in the reference field or phone number, or it can be a variation of spelling. So maybe someone is spelling the name wrong, or anything else that you choose to interpret it. Then you can trigger a specific action. So these actions can be triggered by like approvers, vendor. It can be dimensions that you can trigger, accounts online, for example, and much more. And then we have ExFlow purchase codes. And this is used to add coding on invoice lines automatically. And you can add the purchase code to like the vendor card, you can add it to a reference, to a contract, or directly in ExFlow setup. And with the code, you can split lines, you can add dimensions, you can work with VAT, prod, posting groups, and so on. You can also automate your work with this. So if you, for example, have a vendor that you always add the same coding to the lines, if you use a code like this purchase codes instead, then you don't have to do the same work over and over again. And you can, for example, also you can create a purchase code that you assign to the vendor directly, but you can also like add it to directly to a contract or a reference and so on. So it can be linked in several places. Yeah, let's do the walkthrough in Business Central. Okay, so let's start with the reference codes. You can save it either as a bookmark. I have it as a bookmark up here, or you can do a search, or you can press Alt-Q on your keyboard and do the search. As you can see here, I don't write the full name, so you can only like write some parts of the name of it, and then you can find it in the list. So let's start from the top and look at what all the buttons up here mean. So for example, new means that you're creating a new code. We're going to look at all the settings for a new code later. Next here, we have edit list. If you click on this one, it gives you the possibility to edit the reference codes directly here on the first page. So you don't have to open the reference card. So if we click here, you can see you can edit in all fields. And if you click again, you undo that. And then we have delete, edit, and view. You can also open ExFlow contract here. And if you have a contract linked to this reference, as you can see here, number 1, you go directly to the contract. You have reassigned to another reference code. And this is, for example, if you are on this line, you click here, you can reassign it to another code, and then that code that you originally were on will be blocked. And all the reference values then will be moved to the one you moved it to. You also have overview. If you click here, you have all of the references, and then you can see the related values directly under here if you want like a broader picture and overview of it all. So let's see how things look like if we click on New here. Up here, you have the same things as on the first page. So if you have a contract link, if you click here, you go directly to that. If you want to reassign, you reassign this one that you're on to another one, for example, and so on. But then if you create a new one, you have things you're going to fill out here under general. So reference code up here. This value is the one that is being interpreted. So it can be then like a name, it can be a phone number, it can be anything really that you want to interpret it. So this is important because that's the one that you use. For example, if you use ExFlow data capture, this is the reference code and this is the reference you use there. And then down here, you can add related reference values. I will speak about that shortly, but then you can add, like, for example, if you have a name and then you have a vendor that sometimes spell it wrong, then you can add the wrong name here, for example. And then you have description. And this is for you to know more, just to add some more knowledge about what kind of code this is. You then have vendor number. So if you select a vendor here and then receive a document from that vendor with this reference value, then this reference will be chosen. So for example, if you receive an invoice from a different vendor, you still interpreted this reference value, then this reference code will not be chosen, because if you link the vendor to it, it has to be met, both the code and the vendor to be used. And then you have contract number. You can see if the reference is linked to ExFlow contract here, and if you click here, then if it's linked, you go directly to the contract. And then here, you will see if the reference is connected to a contract that has expired or stopped, then you can see it here. And then we have first approver. So if you choose an approver here, then this one will be the first approver in the workflow. And you need to activate this setting in ExFlow setup in order for the first approver to be activated. And this is also used to find an approval rule, for example, with this person as the first approver. And then we have ExFlow purchase code. So if you know what lines that you should use with this reference, then you can choose the code here, and then you reduce the manual work, for example. And then we have purchaser code. So here you specify whether a purchaser code should be linked with this reference or not. And then we have approval rule. So instead of setting the first approver, you can choose this setting instead if you know which approval rule that should be linked with this reference. And if you set an approval rule here, then it becomes a fixed workflow. So for example, if you work with dynamic approval flows, then you lose that flexibility with this reference code because it will be fixed. So if you know that it's always going to be this one, this rule, these approvers, then you choose the rule here. And then we have blocked. So if you want to block the full reference, you click in this one. You can always also, if you have related reference values and you don't want to use all of them anymore, you can block some of them down here. And as said earlier, here you add related reference values. It can be a variation of spelling or any value really that you want to use. So even if, so you can either then interpret this value or any of this, these related reference values if you want this code to be used. Yeah. So when you're done filling out all these information, then you just push the back button, and then the new reference will been shown here. Now we didn't create one, so nothing is shown, but we can go to a reference that we already created. So let's go directly to this one, Eric. So you can see here on the right, for example, also all the related reference values on this reference. If you click on this and then edit line, you can then edit it. You can also click on page here, and then you have next and previous if you want to go through all your different related reference values for all your references. And then you change them directly down here. One other thing that is nice to know is that you can also create reference directly if you are in the import journal, for example. And also, if you when you create a new ExFlow user, you can use a setting that automatically create new references. So you don't have to set them up every time. So when you need to have a new reference, and if you want it to always be created a new one when you use when you create a new ExFlow user, then you need to go to ExFlow setup to activate that. And I will show you in the PowerPoint a little bit later where you do that. So let's go to the import journal to look at how things look there. Here we have an invoice, and I have my reference codes here. It might look a little bit different in your environment, depending on where on the header level here you have placed your column. So you might have it in another spot. But if you go to the reference code and click on these 3 dots, you get all the reference codes that are available. And here you can also create new. You can also edit list directly here. Yes, that's the reference code. Let's move on to ExFlow purchase code. And a purchase code, you can assign that to a vendor, you can assign it to a reference, to ExFlow contract, and in ExFlow setup. So let's look at the different pages where you can add this. So let's start by going to vendors. And we want to go to this vendor. And then we click on related, and here you have ExFlow vendor setup. Depending on what ExFlow version you have, this looks a little bit different. In the latest version, we have created the vendor setup here. Previously, you have it here directly on the vendor card. But there are several reasons why we put it here. So here you have where you can add the purchase code. And if you click on edit here, you also have the settings that previously was under advanced vendor setup, but now you can see it more easily. You have an easier view over this. So you can add things here as well. So for example, here under general, you can add the purchase code, but you can also add it directly here. You can add it, the purchase code directly to ExFlow reference. Let's go to this one. You can see there's a code here, so you can do edit list and do it directly here, or you can go to the card and add it here. And you can also add it to ExFlow contracts. So we have a contract here. If you open it, you have ExFlow purchase code here. And then you can also add it to ExFlow setup. Here. Sometimes you have to push this show less, show more, and then you can see it. You can also create the codes directly in the import journal. We have an option that is called save coding to vendor. If you use that one, then it will be saved directly on the vendor card. So let's go to the import journal. actions, functions, and then save coding to vendor. So if you already have a purchase code added to the vendor, then you get the option, when you click here, you get the option to overwrite that code. So then you can save the new one, for example. You can also create the purchase code directly in the column. If you click here and then new. When you use save coding to vendor, let's say that you have worked with lines, you have the lines here, and then you just click actions, function, and then save coding to vendor, it's going to use the things you have added here. Yeah, let's go to the purchase codes. Here you have them. You don't have as many buttons up here. You have the new one. It's not that much that you have to fill out. So let's just open a one that I already created. So let's open this one. When you create a new one, you have to fill out the code up here. And then a description, and then you can choose if you want to work with VAT, proposal lines, or amount control during the document creation. And then you fill out details down here for the lines. For example, let's say that you have an account where you want a specific amount. You know that you always have a fixed amount, or you know it's always 50-50 of the amount. So you can choose here that you want percentage or weight, and then you can do a fixed amount. I put 100 here, for example. You can also choose that you do not want any of these, so you can just create the accounts, for example. You also can use, you can see we can work with the deferral codes here, you can work with projects and so on. And then here you have a column called approval. And if you check this, the line will be sent out for approval. If it's not checked, the line will not be visible to your users on the web and therefore cannot be approved. Yeah, so let's go to the import journal again to see how things look like there. So here, I created a reference code. This reference code had a purchase code. So this one ended up here because of the reference code. And this reference code also had an approval rule. So you can see that the approval rule is added down here. And then you can see this amount is then added 50-50 and then the fixed amount of 100. You can then, as I said, add, you don't have to do the amounts or 50-50. You can just use the accounts if you know the accounts, for example. So if you want to learn more about purchase codes or reference codes, we have an online manual, our documentation platform. I will send you the link with the recording later today. And I know that one question that pops up from time to time is, for example, okay, how do I do the purchase code for leasing cars, for example? We have an example of that on our documentation platform. So check that out later when you get the link. Now let's go back to the PowerPoint. So I mentioned some other settings. One of the settings is that you can automatically create ExFlow reference codes when you create an ExFlow user. So this setting, you add it in ExFlow setup, you go to users and then tick in the automatically create ExFlow reference. So when you then create a new ExFlow user, it will be created from the username, that will be the reference, and it will be the first approver on that reference code. Also, make sure that the company you're working in is included in the ExFlow permissions on the user card. for the user. And then also you can create reference codes for existing users. So you can do it two ways. Either you can batch create or you can create per user. If you want to batch create, you go to ExFlow users and then you click on actions and then you click on batch create ExFlow reference for the company you're currently working in. So then you will create a reference for all of the users you have. If you instead, for example, you want to only create a reference code for one existing user, then you do the same thing. You click on actions and then create ExFlow reference. And then it will be creating a reference code for the user on the line you're on.